Nope, no questions here. Everybody's early adopter, so there's not so much activity yet on the Patreon page. Let's see. I see that Dalton Meeks asked, curious if you have any hints on why testosterone, even TRT dosages, cause some people to have insomnia. I wake up earlier than usual, feeling very energetic and physically recovered, but my mind isn't fully refreshed yet. The insomnia worsens the higher the dose is. Playing around with estrogen hasn't affected it. Neither did a beta blocker. I've seen a few people had similar issues and nothing fixed it other than coming off fully. So I already answered this question on the video, but it's not done editing yet. So I'll answer that here and then just wait for the full video to drop in a couple days or so. So there's a lot of people who don't respond well to testosterone or steroids, especially in the beginning of starting TRT or a steroid cycle. It keeps them awake. And that's because steroids and testosterone, trembolone is the worst offender. They increase sympathetic drive, right? They increase that flight or fight response. Now, if you train later in the evening, it means that this flight or fight response might actually last longer because you're on testosterone or a full-blown steroid cycle. So if you train later in the evening and maybe you give yourself 2 or 3 hours before bed, maybe you haven't calmed down yet. Maybe you're not in that rest and digest state yet. You're not back into your sympathetic nervous system. So if you train in the evening, and even if you inject in the morning, you train in the evening, it might be better to move that morning workout or that evening workout to the morning as well. So you have more time to relax, right? You wake up early, you go to the gym, you get your workout done. And then by the time you're back into your rest and digest state, you can actually go to bed later in the evening. So you might have to change your entire routine around because, if you train late or you take some pre-workouts later in the day, right? Now you have increased sensitivity to caffeine. A lot of people experience that because the sympathetic drive goes up. So you're now more susceptible to stimulants. And then you take a stimulant later in the evening, and now you stay awake longer, right? And you can only take so many stimulants during the day for you to kind of, be wired at the end of the day, preventing you from falling asleep. So this is something you have to look into. Because otherwise, it might keep you awake. Now, if it's solely due to the steroids or the testosterone, the best thing to do is just to scale back the dose to true TRT. You might have to go back to 15 or 25 milligrams testosterone subcutaneous in the morning every day. So by the time it peaks later in the evening, you don't have so much of a stimulatory effect of the testosterone on your sympathetic nervous system or parasympathetic nervous system, on your dopamine levels, right? Which is inversely correlated. So when your dopamine goes up, your testosterone levels go up, but that's obviously only naturals. But when your testosterone goes up, your dopamine levels also go up and your metabolism go up. So there's a lot of factors that you have to realize. You can scale back the dose and do daily micro administrations. That it will help with a lot of people. And otherwise, you have to look into your neurosteroids, which the longer you stay on cycle, the more your neurosteroids are going to be reduced, right? So you can take HCG, for example, or DHA and pregnenolone supplementation. And yes, that DHA and pregnenolone deep dive is coming next. So if you supplement those instead of having this heightened state all the time, the DHA and pregnenolone, if you space those out, morning and evening, now you're more responsive to GABA, which is the relaxing hormone. So instead of going the supplementation route, where you take 5-HTP, GABA, melatonin before bed, now you take DHA and pregnenolone throughout the day, which are otherwise depleted. And now you balance out your neurotransmitter response to a greater extent compared to before, where you're only hammering the steroids and not taking care of your neuroreceptors or neurosteroids, right? Which modulate the GABA-A receptor, allowing you to kind of relax and unwind at the end of the day when your body starts secreting GABA. So if your neurosteroid levels are low, you're probably not going to respond very well to GABA. So this is another method to kind of get back into this rest and digest state later in the day. Yeah, and then all the easy solutions, like you have this blue light therapy. You don't look at the screen, you start reading a book an hour before bed, you sleep according to your circadian rhythm. So all these things you can look into, but it mostly has to do with scaling back the dose, looking into your neurosteroid concentrations. You can easily do blood work to determine if they're low, and then you start supplementing them in. And most people start to sleep a lot better just with those simple adjustments. So I already made a dedicated video about that. We'll drop sometime during this week. All right, I got some questions here. Jason, can you recommend an NMN brand? I've taken it without noticing much, while noticed quite a bit of positive with PQQ. Wondering if it's the brand issue, and thank you for everything you do. My pleasure. Okay, so the brand that I've been taking, first I tried the nicotinamide mononucleotide from Gen Oracle, who's actually slowly opening up as an online pharmacy / online TRT clinic, so to say, anti-aging clinic. So once they're ready to go, I'll have a link in my link tree, and then you can start the onboarding process, because you still need to go through the ringer and talk to one of the patient care coordinators to get certain things prescribed. Of course, this is all from Thailand, so it's a little bit more liberal compared to TRT clinics, anti-aging clinics in the Western world, but they'll still be able to write scripts and send that worldwide. So stay tuned for that. That's where I got my NMN brand from first, but since, you know, it's quite expensive from them, and there's always a very good discount with iHerb. So iHerb has their own in-house brand called California Golden Nutrition. I'm not sure if I can link that here at the same time. Let me see if I can do that. Let me search that real quick. And this is, let me put the timestamps before I forget. TRT, no sleep. So I don't have to watch everything back and then go back through that. Let's see, where is this nicotinamide mononucleotide? Oh, of course, sold out. Yeah, that's the problem with iHerb. They sell that stuff out once in a while. Let me see if I can do that here. Show. Okay, so this is the brand that I use. You probably can't click that, so you just have to go look for California Gold Nutrition, NMN. They sell 175 milligram tablets, 60 caps per bottle, and usually it's $45. But then every once in a while they have like 30% discount, so I get like 10 bottles at a time, and then luckily, because you guys use my iHerb discount code, I don't need to pay anything for it, because you know, when you use my discount code, so of course I get a little bit of a kickback. When I get a kickback, there's, you know, value added as credit, so I can just kind of, you know, use a laundry strategy to take that commission and use that to buy supplements. So you just wait for the discount, and otherwise you try a couple other brands maybe in the meantime if you want to get started sooner, because again, this might be out of stock, or it's only out of stock for Thailand, and it might still be in stock for America. So this is the one I use. I'm very happy with this product. I've tried the Life Extension nicotinamide riboside, and it didn't do anything. So, you know, the problem is with this NAD plus and our NMN, it's a huge minefield. So I would recommend people just buy one bottle, give it a try, see if they notice a difference. I notice a huge difference from nicotinamide mononucleotides. But again, if you're producing a lot of NAD plus by yourself already, you know, a supplement like this is not going to be the needle mover, because you produce a significant amount by yourself already. So this is something you have to keep in mind. Like, if it doesn't work and you change the brand and then it still doesn't work, okay, maybe supplementing, you know, a precursor is just not significant, and you need to go to NAD plus directly. So you notice a positive effect with PQQ. I've been running the Gero Formulas brand, I think. Gero Formulas PQQ. Maybe it was also California Gold Nutrition. Gold Nutrition. And I use so many supplements, it's kind of hard to keep track sometimes. I can't remember which brand it was. No, it was California Gold Nutrition. Okay, so 20 milligrams, 90 capsules is like $36, but that's before discount. And I see that they have 20 milligrams, 30 capsules. They have 30% off. So if you go to iHerb right now, let me put this link in the chat and make another banner. Edit. So if you go here, show. Oh, no, sorry. My bad. If you go here, I can see, again, being in Thailand, that it's 30% off. So you use my discount code to get another 5% off, and then it starts to become affordable. That's why I mentioned in that mitochondrial support stack video, everything is excluding discount. So even though the stacks might be very expensive, when you can get like 35% discount or 25%, then it's actually quite reasonable. But you only have to purchase it just like with Gorilla Mind. You only purchase the stuff when there's a huge fat discount, and then you stock up. You know, you buy a couple bottles that last you a while, and then once that's running out, or you set an alert, which I think you can do in iHerb also. You set an alert when things are back in stock, or when they have a discount going on. We just keep track of their mailing list. Then you know, you'll be notified more than early enough, and then you can get a huge fat discount. All right, a couple more questions here. Let's see, Darius Mixoniu. We've probably butchered that, but Darius, I'm sure that's okay. How about, let me timestamp that real quick, 11/12. How about low-dose trenbolone use in the off-season on TRT plus with exogenous insulin and GH? Is the potential IGF-1 synthesis due to synergistic effect, it's been a long day, due to the synergistic effect, worth long-term exposure to low-dose tren? Now, even with low-dose tren, I would still expose yourself a maximum to 8 weeks. You know, you got to look at it this way, like all the drugs over decades, it compounds, right? So let's say you can handle a maximum of, I don't know, 25 grams of tren, right? So you could do 25 weeks at a gram of tren per week in your lifetime, or you could really do a low dose and just get all the positive effects and very minimal side effects. So if you do like 25 milligrams a week, 75 milligrams per week, and you microdose that daily, or, you know, nice small injections to minimize the side effects, then you should be able to run that for a longer time. But the longest I would recommend, 50 to 75 milligrams of tren, would be 12 weeks in duration. Now, you can become an absolute freak in 12 weeks when you're also using exogenous insulin and growth hormone. But when you're only on TRT plus, you're not going to grow substantially compared to doing an actual steroid cycle. And of course, when you're on TRT plus and it's exogenous insulin and growth hormone and a low dose of tren, even if the testosterone is, well, let's say 200 milligrams, I mean, you're going to get an effect like a 500 milligram or maybe 700 milligram cycle, right? Because you're creating synergy between test, tren, probably an aromatase inhibitor, exogenous insulin, and growth hormone. That's just basically a full-blown cycle, even though the dosages are probably going to be moderate. So yes, I think you'll get a phenomenal response from that. And then as needed over time, you can slowly incrementally build up the dosages. You know, so maybe you start with 200 tests, 50 milligrams of tren per week, 10 IUs Lantus upon waking, and then maybe a little bit around the workout, whether that's 2, 3, 4, 5 IUs insulin pre or post. So that's entirely up to you. And then 2 IUs growth hormone. I think that's a great stack to start. And then as you progress through the cycle, you might increase the dosages to 300 tests, 75 milligrams of tren, 15 units Lantus or 20 units of Lantus, and maybe 5 to 10 units of fast-acting insulin around the workout, and then 4 units of growth hormone, right? So now you see that even though the exogenous insulin and the growth hormone is going up disproportionately because you're providing so much nutrient shuttling, right? The trenbolone is increasing your IGF-1 sensitivity. The insulin is promoting the nutrient absorption. The insulin and the growth hormone and the trenbolone help with not only IGF-1 sensitivity, but also IGF-1 production, obviously. And then, you know, as long as you manage your diet very structurally and carefully, I think you're going to get a great result. And worth long-term exposure, and it entirely depends on your ability to manage your health. So if you're on top of your astragalus root extract, you know, a method to control your blood pressure, whether that's telmisartan, Nebivolol, combination of both, Cialis, you know, electrolyte intake. That's, I think, as long as you mitigate all the side effects and your blood pressure and your blood work stays reasonably okay, you might be able to run this for 12 weeks or maybe even longer, right? So a low dose is more sustainable compared to a high dose, which of course, you know, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, then your blood work is kind of shit and you probably feel shit also, and then you need to back off. All right, let's move on to the next one. Slobodan Rector, why did you stop taking Anavar? You said you would love to take it all year long, so why the stoppage? Best regards. I am planning for kids, so everything is coming out. Right? I took the fluvoxamine out. I took the modafinil out. The testosterone is being tapered. I stopped the Primo and the nandrolone before I went to America. So now I'm just on tests and HCG. And I figured that the Primo would last me up until the point that I would really come off, right? Next month, it's just 1 amp of tests basically every 2 weeks, so half an amp of tests per week. So I figured I wouldn't need an aromatase inhibitor. And now I did my blood work last Friday before I went to Padua, and my estrogen was quite high. My nipples are getting a little bit sensitive, so I'm back on an aromatase inhibitor just to bring the estrogen down. That's why I'm a little bit puffy, a little bit watery. And I would love to take Anavar, man, but it's just, all steroids have a negative effect on your fertility. So why risk it? And, you can bet both of my testicles that when my wife is pregnant and the baby is healthy, I'll back on cycle and do all these crazy experiments again. Maybe not that crazy, but I'll go back on cycle and run some Anavar and regain, my size back and then, my shape and all that stuff. So if you don't care about fertility, you just care about gains and you have access to proper Anavar, dude, I would run it all year long. 5 milligrams most of the year. Then maybe certain periods of times you ramp it up to 10 milligrams, 20, 25 milligrams. I don't see a reason why you would want to go any higher than 25 milligrams Anavar if your stack is tremendous. So let's say you're doing a combination of tests, Primo, nandrolone, and then the Anavar is on top. And then you take insulin growth hormone, perhaps other couple different things. The synergy that you get from that, adding the Anavar in a low dose of 25 milligrams per day, brutal. It's fucking brutal. The contraction that I get, the strength gains, I don't see how people could run 50 milligrams of Anavar per day unless it's fake or they're not doing everything correctly and they don't know how to induce a mega pump or, they don't eat so much food and they're not very strong, right? Then you can abuse the Anavar, no problem. But it's probably fake. All right, next one. Also from Slobodan. How can I check if a test product... Oh, wait, this was Anavar. I got to keep writing these down. 1118. QR. How can I check if a test product is original besides the QR coupon code on European products? Okay, so pharmaceutical products, most of them, they don't use a QR code. If they do use a QR code, all you get is a serial number, which is actually embedded in the QR code. So the QR code doesn't go to a website, doesn't go anywhere else. The QR code just reads a serial number, which is usually the same as a serial number, which is actually presented on the box. So Bayer testivirons, for example, they have a very small QR code. It's freaking tiny. So my camera, it can't scan it, but you need to take a picture of it and then you upload this little QR code to a website where I can actually scan it because it's so small, it's so close that my iPhone can't capture the resolution. And then all you get is a serial number, which is basically embedded in the QR code itself. And if you see like a European brand or an Indian brand or a Thai brand or wherever brand, and it has a fat QR code for a serial registration, right? And it says your product is legitimate. That's only with underground labs. So even though the product is legitimate for a particular UGL, doesn't mean that it's quality. Right? Alpha Pharma, Meditech, Kfei, Pharmacom, all these brands, all garbage. And even though they use QR codes, right? So you can check if it's legitimate or not, because in India and the Arab countries and somewhere in Thailand even, they counterfeit all these UGLs. And sometimes even the UGLs themselves, because they got shady customers, they'll produce a separate batch for a customer that just doesn't want to pay the full amount. They'll underdose everything, still make a sale. It's still legitimate, but maybe later on they will invalidate all of those serial codes. I've heard this happen a couple different times. So it's a huge shady practice. And if you really want to know if your test product is like pharmaceutical, check if the brand is actually on the stock exchange. So Bayer is on the stock exchange. Watson Cypionate from Pfizer is on the stock exchange. Rotex Medica on the name Pan Pharma. So sometimes you do a little bit of search. Rotex Medica testivirons. Rotex Medica is not on the stock exchange, but Pan Pharma, its parent company, is on the stock exchange. So if the brand that's producing a pharmaceutical is having stocks up for sale, then you know it's legitimate, right? The the way stocks are being presented on the market. There's a huge process involved, to keep it simple. And without regulatory action, these companies would not be on the stock exchange. So that's the way I go by it now. Like sometimes you hear about these weird brands and you've never heard of it, and you type the brand in, and then sometimes you get a website that looks super legit, not on the stock exchange. Sometimes you get a website that looks freaking old, like it was designed on a Windows 95 computer and still uses HTML3. But that company is on the stock exchange. You just don't update their websites properly because they go through normal medical supply chain. It's all through a distribution network. They don't need to have a fancy website to deal with the end consumer, because the end consumer only deals with a prescribing doctor, and then you and me and everybody else gets a couple products fallen off the back of the truck, right? So that's kind of how it works. All right, Darius. Again, regarding trading, don't forget timestamps, 11:21. Regarding trading during massive blocks, do you consider frequency to be irrelevant if total volume and proximity to failure are equated? Applies to enhanced individuals only. Okay, so you also have to keep in mind that food intake and drug intake also plays a highly contributing role in how much volume and frequency you can recover from. So I'm assuming it's a massing phase, so you're eating a decent amount of food and your drug intake is, semi-moderate, but good enough to grow, right? So it's less abusive than during a cutting phase or contest prep, where generally speaking, the drugs are going to be higher because you can't rely on the anabolism from the food because your calories are restricted. So let's say you're eating a significant amount of food and you're on 500, 1,000, 1,500 milligrams of steroids in total. And you take insulin, growth hormone, IGF-1 perhaps, some pump products, whatever. You can actually train quite often and quite high volume, right? If your sleep is in order, you're taking all the micronutrients. If your entire life revolves around training, you can take your naps or multiple naps per day. Frequency and volume, training to failure is just, as long as you can recover from it, you can do it, right? But then you start incorporating a real job where you have to walk a lot, or you are high stressed, and you maybe only sleep 6 hours per day. Then you need to scale off the training back. Maybe you can bring your foods to work, right? Because otherwise people are going to look at you. It's so individual that I always find it very hard to really say, clear cuts. Okay, frequency is irrelevant because you have a total volume. You do a bro split, 5 workouts per week, and every workout is chest. You do like 20 sets for chest and maybe 6 sets to failure, and the rest is a little bit of a pump work and to get a little bit more volume and burn through the carbohydrates so you can shuttle more other nutrients through with insulin, right? It really depends on your protocol, man. And other guys can just go balls to the wall with the push-pull legs, 3 days on, 1 day off. So they basically train, each body part twice per day, but they really dial back the volume, and the intensity is restricted because they take out the what is it called? The junk volume. That's what they call it nowadays. So you do a couple workout sets or a couple warm-up sets, a couple sets just to feel the weight, the increments, and it's maybe 6 to 4 reps each time. Then you get to your working weight, you bang out 12 reps consistently without taking breaks. Maybe the last 2 reps, you actually take a breather, but you should be able to get like 10 reps continuously until your eyes start, turning red and your face is, all mangled and stuff. And then you grind out 2 reps. You maybe do a back offset or a higher increment with less reps. And that's it for that workout, right? Then you jump to other exercises and you do maybe 1 or 2 working sets. So structuring your workout is, it's still for bodybuilding, it's kind of misunderstood by a lot of people, but there's a lot of great places where you can sign up where they really try to explain how to train in a very structured fashion. You have the Jordan Peters website, a Mountain Dog website. You also got a ton of ebooks on how to structure your workout. And honestly, with experience, if you're doing it for 10 to 20 years, you can kind of play it by ear, man. I play all my workouts by ear. Sometimes I'm a little bit more tired because I had a busy day. Sometimes I'm full with energy. And when I'm full with energy, I'm going to take advantage of it. I'm going to do more workouts or more exercises, more volume. I'm just going to go by feel, right? And sometimes Sometimes you do a set and you're just not happy with it. You're like, oh, man, I left like 2 reps in the tank. Okay, you just do it again. You just do that set again. And then you exceed. So sometimes that happens. It doesn't happen a lot, but sometimes you just need to do an extra set just to get your mind right, and then feel that you actually did enough work on that particular machine, because sometimes your head is just not in the game. So, doing progressive overload in the logbook and all that stuff is good, but your workout is only as good as the ability for you to recover from it. And your logbook is not going to tell you if you're going to recover the next day or not. So a little bit of flexibility needs to be involved. And when you get really good at that adaptation day by day, workout by workout, and even throughout the workout, exercise by exercise, I think that's the best way to train. But again, that takes years to develop. And and it also means that the workouts are going to be more interesting because they're going to be different every week. So that way, after 20 years of lifting, you don't really get bored anymore. And then you don't get anxiety going to the gym because, I got to do 12 plates on the leg press for 15 reps this week, that kind of stuff. I'm over that phase now. Jason, thank you, Steve, as always. We'll use your discount codes to show support and appreciation. 1, 2 double biceps for you, Jason. You are awesome. And the next question from Jason is, when you travel like you did to the United States, do you take your vitamins and minerals? I think you mentioned you left it all behind because traveling for work, take a lot of pills too. Yeah. So, with the United States, I was very concerned because I've had clients travel there for competition. I've had Americans travel from America to Thailand or Dubai or other places, and they come back and they get searched. And, they get profiled and then they get pulled to the side and their back gets searched. And sometimes they brought something, sometimes they didn't. But either way, even if you didn't bring anything, it still takes 20 minutes, at least 30 minutes. And then, of course, they pull me out of the line, for example. And then my wife is there, just arriving the first time. And, bringing anything with me, even when on a prescription, I just didn't want to go through that process. And I also know that sometimes the Border Patrol is so strict. They see you're shredded or you're big or whatever, or you're in a bad mood, and then they start testing your vitamins with the reagent compounds. I've heard this happen also. And they also do this in Holland. They check some materials. I left Holland, 5 years ago, the last time, I think, 4 years ago, before COVID. And they started checking my bag with some sort of reagent compound. And I wasn't sure if that was for drugs or for steroids or whatever, but they took like a couple samples. It goes to one of these quick test analyzers that's right there at the airport. And I'm like there, I didn't bring anything, with me, but I'm just like, what the hell's going on? What are they testing for? Are they testing for COVID, for Coke, for MDMA? It's very popular. Holland is the biggest exporter for that. So I wasn't really sure what was going on. I just hate spending more time at the airport and talking with these guys than is necessary. Oh, I see that we have a little bit of a connection issue. Can you guys let me know in the chat if the quality is still okay? How's the connection, guys? Let me know in the chat. I'm assuming it's okay. Babe, are you using your phone? No? Okay. Still okay. Okay, sorry. So, no, this time to the United States, I didn't bring anything. The importation or the passport control was very fast. So we just walked past, everything normally. And we didn't get our back searched. And even though I had a very friendly doctor in Arizona write me scripts for basically everything I wanted to bring, still I haven't gone through the process. So, I didn't bring anything with me. I had these scripts with me. And then I went to every pharmacy in Los Angeles, which is the state of California. And none of the CVS's or Walgreens accepted my script because it was not the script. I should have filled it in Arizona, whatever laws they have. It's quite cumbersome. So I went to maybe 5, 6 pharmacies with a script from Arizona, all legitimate, to my name, and then, brought my passport and all that stuff. I had cash, insurance details with me. None of them wanted to fill my script. And I tried to do the same thing in Las Vegas. None of them wanted to fill the script. So I think next time what I'll do is I'll onboard with one of the doctors that I know in the United States that I've been working with. They can write me a script and then send it from within the United States to my hotel, and then it's all legitimate. So again, I don't want to go through the process at the airport. Yeah, and if you travel yourself a lot, I think I made a video about this, about how to travel with gear, and it really depends on where you're going. Flying into Thailand with gear, no problem. If you're flying to Dubai with gear, no problem, right? Holland, I never got checked. Flying to Sweden, Australia, and America, I wouldn't risk it, unless you're an American yourself, how to deal with your state's law, which as an outsider is quite difficult because you have state laws and then federal laws, and man, you don't even want to spend the weeks that you need to research that. You just leave all that stuff at home and then don't think about it. And traveling for 1 or 2 weeks without gear and vitamins, it's okay, man. It's okay, you'll pick up the slack when you get back, and then you're fine. All right, I see that the connection is quite okay. All right, let's see what this is. 11:30. Slobodan. Also, big thanks. Need to hurry now. Wish you all the best with the family plans. Let your semen be super strong. Thanks, buddy. Yeah, so we're gonna come off, or I'm coming off. My wife came off ages ago after she stopped competing. So I'm gonna come off end of February. I already did some blood work. I'll probably make a video about that. There's not so much interesting stuff going on, to be honest. So I'll try to keep it short, but still give you guys an update. So basically, the last time I did a fertility check, I was around 60 million sperm, at bottom of the acceptable range morphology and motility. That was on cycle, but I was using HCG. So that's actually quite good. With those semen parameters, I should get somebody pregnant. But regarding DNA fragmentation or testing of the DNA itself, the chromosomes within the sperm themselves, that's a little bit more cumbersome. So I'm just not going to take the risk, right? I'm going to go through the entire process, document everything, document all of the research that I'm going to do, which is also on the to-do list, how particular drugs affect your fertility. And then I don't see a reason why we would have an issue with fertility, because my wife is healthy, her uterus is good, her eggs are good, and my semen parameters are acceptable on cycle, but they were great when I came off cycle for the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So I don't think it's going to take that long. But if it does, if it takes a year, okay, so be it, man. It's, this is like a couple things in life you don't really get. You learn on the job, so to say. So one of that is with kids. Another one is with marriage, right? Like you're going to the gym, you do like 1,000 different workouts, right? But with marriage, hopefully you have one. And that first one, you can't prepare yourself for marriage. You think you're doing everything right, but you have to learn on the job. And it's the same with kids. But with kids, whereas with a relationship, you have a whole whining and dining period, right? So you can feel each other out. And with having kids, the man has to be healthy for, let's say, a year. So there's no oxidative stress on the semen. And then the woman has to be healthy for a year before the pregnancy. And then after the pregnancy, right, for another year. And then the breastfeeding time. So for her, it's going to be even a longer trajectory to really oversee that, developing a healthy baby and then breastfeeding healthy breast milk to the baby. And then it's a very long trajectory. So we just want to do it right. I've heard all these guys talk about, why don't you stay on TRT? There's no scientific evidence. And I see so many guys that are staying on TRT to do the fertility protocol, and they get girls, or they get kids that are autistic slightly, or they don't get pregnant at all. So I'm not going to take that risk. And if I have to sacrifice my bodybuilding and a little bit of muscle, I've gone through that before. So for me, it's not really a big deal. And I'm just gonna, do my thing until the wife is pregnant and we have a healthy baby. And in the meantime, I'll get the plate removed out of my leg from a motorcycle accident, which I had, 2007, 15 years ago. That plate is still in my leg. And I have to do gyno surgery. So I've always been procrastinating about that. But now I know that, there will be some down periods. So I'll schedule that probably in May. Get the gyno surgery done, do a little bit of liposuction underneath here because the fat is starting to accumulate, and I have to use all kinds of different drugs to really get rid of that. So, you know, we're just going to do a little bit of liposuction underneath that, get that gyno removed, make it all look nice, remove the plate. And then since I'll be immobile, I won't really be able to go to the gym. I'm timing that with the release of the new Zelda game, so I can play video games and recover. And then in all of the rest of the free time that I have, I'm going to make YouTube videos and content. And then by the time I finish the video game, I should be able to go back to the gym. And then I've had my, couple months of fun on the Zelda game, and then I have to wait another 5 years. All right, next question. Darius, 1136. Let's see, what are we talking about? Is there any truth behind the Anavar and Turinabol 1+1 3 effect? Anavar and Turinabol. Well, so there's always synergy between different drugs, but that particular combination, I don't think Turinabol would contribute much, to be honest. So Anavar is very potent by itself. On paper, the anabolic and androgenic rating is much higher, but those studies are way flawed, and I still haven't really released that video on why that is flawed, but I will do that at one point in time, the anabolic to androgenic rating. So if you combine both, okay, you get the unique characteristics of both, right? The overall milligram dose is higher also, so now you get a higher dose effect. But if you take Anavar at that higher dose, so let's say you have 20 milligrams of Anavar, 20 milligrams of Turinabol, 40 milligrams in total. If you took 40 milligrams of Anavar, you would get a much greater result, because milligram for milligram, Anavar is more potent compared to Turinabol, right? And don't get me started on this. All the steroids potentiate the same amount of protein expression. Right? Building muscle tissue is not only about protein expression. It's also about energy production and nitrogen retention and mineral retention and anti-catabolic effects. And it's people that say that, I don't think they really understand the science and, of course, the practical applications of these drugs. So, like, if you want to go with synergy mostly has to do with optimizing multiple vectors. So Anavar and Turinabol are through compounds that go through the androgen receptor. Anavar potentially could block the glucocorticoid receptor, so you get potentially a little bit of fat loss out of that, or anti-catabolic effects. Turinabol is not known to do that. So you get like two compounds through one pathway, right? Take the Turinabol out, you replace that with growth hormone. Now you have Anavar acting on the androgen receptor, potentially the glucocorticoid receptor, and then growth hormone on the growth hormone receptor, and then also releasing IGF-1 through the liver, right? Increasing IGF-1 production. Now you have four pathways instead of one pathway, right? This is where the synergy comes from. So synergy is not considered to be hammering four different compounds that optimize the same pathway. So you have test, boldenone, and mastrone all acting on the Anavar or androgen receptor. You actually have to do test, GH, insulin, and then maybe a cytochrome P450 enzyme inhibitor, right, to prevent the breakdown of growth of testosterone. Or you add in something like telmisartan, which has some modulating effects on the renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system, or Nootropics, preserving some of the calories that you're eating, which would otherwise raise your heart rate. So now you can eat less, right, and get back into your sympathetic nervous system state a little bit faster post-workout, because you calm down and relax faster, right? So that is where true synergy comes from. That's optimizing multitude of different pathways. And when you look at my cycles, right, there's a little bit of a lot of different things. So I'm optimizing literally everything, every little vector I know, to get true synergy. So now the side effects from each compound are going to be minimal or non-existent, but I still get good effects, which are done 1 + 1 + 1 + 1, blah, 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 is 100, right? So this is basically the philosophy of how I design my cycles nowadays. And whereas before I would just make those tests and insulin and GH, right? Those days are behind me, but that would get the job done also. And that's literally three different vectors. That's 1 + 1 + 1 = 10, right? So this is how you have to look at it. All right, Jason, it is 11:40. Have you seen issues with higher estrogen driving up histamines? Oh, somebody's been. Is that from Dr. Dean? I know he's been talking about histamines quite a bit. Have you seen any issues with estrogen driving up histamines and allergies? Don't mind being a little bit watery, but such allergies go crazy. Take an AI and they go away. A real predicament. Lol. Okay, so histamine can come up from a multitude of different things. I think that metformin increases histamine production or histamine production. I believe that telmisartan can increase histamine production. And when you really dive into it, like you type in the drug that you're taking or the metabolites that you might get from that drug, histamines or mitochondria, you'll probably get a whole list of effects regarding that particular search function. And then you can see if it has an effect or not. So with estrogen, I'm not entirely sure, to be honest, but if you've noticed that by controlling your estrogen, you don't get a histamine-like effect, okay, maybe that's part of the root cause. But it could also be that the estrogen is just making you hold a lot more water. And honestly, now that I see my estrogen is high and I'm taking telmisartan, how much of a water mitigating effect you get from that, it's not that much, and I control all the variables pretty much year round. So if your allergies goes up from having higher estrogen, is that due to the estrogen itself, or because you're now more water retentive, you have more histamines in your body, and now the way your immune system handles these allergies, these outside, foreign bodies can cause your allergies to go up. Maybe you're creating a environment where allergies, the effect of the allergies gets bad. And maybe the estrogen is an originating cause of that, but not the root cause. So if you bring the water retention down, then maybe that's because your histamine levels are less and the response to your allergies are less also. So that's something you have to look into. So maybe if you use an AI and your estrogen is high and you mitigate some of the effects, okay, that's great. But maybe you need an antihistamine, or maybe you need to follow a low histamine diet, which some people need to do, because even with high histamine intake, they get some sort of allergic response. Or you need to address the root cause of the allergies and then try to mitigate it that way. So I can take myself as an example. When I was young, I would always get like heat rash. So it would be here in the inner arm and in the legs and in my neck here, and it would be horrible. Horrible. I would scratch myself, to the point I was bleeding. So this is an allergy and histamine response, right? And I never knew what the root cause was until I switched to a ketogenic diet, and I followed an elimination diet by taking all of the carbohydrates, right? The milk and the dairy and whatever else. I took all of that out. I follow a ketogenic diet, and now the heat rash was gone. So some sort of food allergy that I developed, and I'm still not sure what the root cause was, caused my allergies to be 10 times worse. And I couldn't piece that together. And my parents couldn't either. I was 5, 6, 7 years old when this happened. And I would just eat, cookie cutter European food, bread, butter, cheese, the usual garbage. And then when I was like 15, 17 years old, and I switched to a ketogenic diet because I wanted to do bodybuilding a little bit more serious, all those issues went away because I eliminated certain food sources from my diet. And I never scratched my inner elbows or inner knees or my neck ever again. So sometimes you have to look somewhere completely different for you to find a solution. And once you do, you can make a decision not to include those practices or food sources in your program, and then it might resolve itself entirely. All right, I think we've gone through the questions. So please, if you have any more for me, just ask them so I can answer them here, guys. All right, just ask what you want, and I'll just go through them one by one because there's only 3 people in the chat. All right, there it is. Here we go. It is 11 allergies, 44. If one gets Staphylococcus aureus, isn't that cured by an antibiotic-based treatments? Might be permanent. Does that increase infection risk of intramuscular or subcutaneous injections? I got an emphasis with safe injection practices. So, Darius, did you use a pharmaceutical grade compound? Did you use an underground lab? Was that oil-based, water-based? Does this compound contain benzyl benzoate? Like if you get a staph infection, you could get that from so many different sources. So, okay, maybe the staph was on your body. You didn't clean yourself thoroughly. You didn't shower properly after the gym. You did your shots. It has nothing to do with the product that you used, but maybe the bacteria was on your skin, and staph can't really permeate the skin from what I understand. But if you have a little cut or a little rash, or you start pinning, Right now, this infection can actually permeate into the skin, and it bypasses the immune system, and it can go quite systemic. So, right, you besides safer injection practices, you also have to look at to your, if you have like a little cut on your hand, band-aid up before you go somewhere where staph infections could be present, whether that's a gym or a boxing gym, MMA place. Those mats are like staph heaven, or even the hospital. There are plenty of infections there. Yeah, you just got to be careful. Lyme's disease, from ticks. Some people get that just by walking in the park or in the forest one time, right? And they're fucked for a very long time. So just try to avoid as many like unsanitary places as possible. All right, I see that he posted another question. So I used UGL, but the same as many months before. I never responded badly to it before. I understand that it might have been external. So you got to understand with UGLs, there's no quality control. So the quality might change batch by batch. An UGL, even though you use the serial codes, the labeling, the stickers, the country of origin, right, where they send it from, might all still be the same. Maybe one time their source in China runs out and they source it somewhere else, or the source in China produces a batch that's, instead of 98.9% pure, now it's 80% pure, or it's not properly handled, or something happens during the brewing process. So this is something you have to keep in mind. There's no third-party testing. There's no scrutinous methods of analyzing. They produce batch by batch. One batch might be good, next batch might be shit. And then, most of the people that don't really write bad reviews on the message boards, because otherwise they either get banned, or that comment gets removed by the moderator, or the source makes right away, and that comment gets removed as well. So you go through the source reviews, and like, oh, it's all good. Then you order some product, and then one or two files are bad because they messed up in the production process, and then you have to contact the source and say, hey, listen, I get allergies or a rash or an infection or something even worse. That's just a risk you run with underground lab. Personally, at this day and age, I would rather just brew my own gear. If I didn't have access to pharmaceutical, I would just brew my own gear. I don't trust these underground labs at all. Sorry to say it. I don't trust it at all anymore. All right. Jason, any experience with Donepezil? Something I would like to recommend for cognitive benefits or no? No, I've not experimented with that yet. I do have a box in the closet here laying around. I also have a box of nicer Goline. So that's, even though it sounds like Cabergoline, it's a dopamine receptor agonist that works a little bit differently. So whereas with Cabergoline is a dopamine receptor agonist that lowers prolactin levels, and it's quite mega dosed in cases of Parkinson's, the nicer Goline actually increases blood flow to the brain. So I know people that they get a good response out of that, similar to injectable carnitine or acetyl L-carnitine, where they get a little bit of a nootropic and brain-opening effect, because now their brain can absorb more fatty acids, right? Because the carnitine stores are higher. And I notice a similar effect, albeit more pronounced, with the nicer Goline, or however you pronounce it. So now, unfortunately, I didn't have time to experiment with Donepezil. This whole nootropics feels a little bit new to me. I've tried, modafinil and Adderall and all those drugs quite extensively, but there's now so many different drugs out there. And personally, I don't get so much out of it, these nootropics. So I know people like the biohackers, or these, entrepreneurial stacks with all kinds of nootropics, the bromantine and the alpha GPC and the this and the that and the uridine phosphate, right? All these guys are making all these weird drugs. But I don't know. I usually don't get any more productivity or any more creativity out of it. If anything, I just feel more tired at the end of the day. I feel that the mitochondrial support stack is way better for energy levels and focus and the overall productivity compared to any other nootropic that I've ever tried. So I'm not sure if I will experiment with that in the near future, but if more people ask me about it, then I will try. I recently tried tesofensine, but I'll make a separate video about that. It didn't blunt my appetite at all, but it does act quite like a stimulant. So, stay tuned for that video. That's going to be an interesting one. BioBros, we also addressed that quite in depth, but that, Derek didn't have time to edit those videos together because he's still hiring new editors and that kind of stuff. So hopefully I think from February 1st, those Bio Bros or Super Physiological Man podcast clips are going to drop. At least the full podcast is already on my channel. So as soon as the man, I just lost focus. Sorry. As soon as all those clips drop on Derek's YouTube channel, then I'll post the full podcast on my channel. All right, Jason, another one. This is 1150. As you get older, will you try to crush your ApoB with statins in an attempt to live as long as possible? Statins. All right, I see a lot of this anti-aging questions, something that TSU's on. I'm about 40 as well. No, because my ApoE-B and lipoprotein a and ApoE-A, et cetera, they're not bad at all, you know? So I've been eating healthy, you know, predominantly since I was like 15, 17 years old. I exercise quite frequently. I do daily fasted cardio or like 5-6 days a week. So my lipids are quite okay. So I don't see a reason why I would want to take statins. And even though maybe the scientific evidence says, okay, you can prolong your life with 5, 10, 7 years, whatever, if you take statins. Okay, great. I'm living now. And my experiences with statins is that they make you sore. They impair fertility. They, might result in cognitive decline, which I've heard from some people. Inhibiting cholesterol synthesis is not what you want to do unless you're a heart patient. If you're a heart patient, okay, you need to, because you have to prevent these arteries from getting blocked any further. My calcium score is 0, right, in the heart. So I've had my CT scan done already last year. So I'll be good to go for the next couple of years. And I think it's better just to look into your dietary habits and your overall exercise performance. You need to utilize the cholesterol that you're producing. A lot of people don't utilize it. It just floats around in the bloodstream, causing plaque. So if you're currently inactive and sedentary, yeah, you might need a statin. But if you're physically active and you pay attention to your diet, and you maybe take ezetimibe to bring your overall cholesterol absorption down, or you take citrus bergamot to help with your HDL and LDL levels as well, I don't think it's necessary to take a statin, right? There's like advisable anti-aging strategies, and then there's hypochondriac anti-aging, which in many cases is probably going to lead to deleterious results anyway, because the long-term evidence isn't there. And just like bodybuilders doing quite extreme shit with their steroids and dosages, these anti-aging guys do extreme shits with medication, which maybe 10, 20 years from now gets proven that that was the wrong approach. So with this stuff that is not so much, is quite new, okay, I'm willing to run an experiment to see if there's any benefits. But from my personal experience and the negative effects that I got from running statins in the past, no, it's not something I want to subject myself to going forward. Next one, Darius Mixoniu. Does androgen receptor concentration upregulate increase based on long-term high systemic concentrations of androgens? Positive feedback like. Yeah, so from what I understood when I researched the subject about a few years back, is that, write it down, AR, is that testosterone, DHEA, estradiol, and the cuddle-apple hormones, they actually upregulate the expression of androgen receptors. So that makes logical sense, because when testosterone attaches to the androgen receptor, and the androgen receptor translocates to the nucleus, and there's a couple of cofactors that then attach to the DNA, starts producing RNA, which then gets transcribed into protein, which folds, and then you have a new protein structure available, whether that's an aromatase enzyme or a new androgen receptor. So this is, there should be a positive feedback loop, because if testosterone binds to all of the androgen receptors and now all the androgen receptors is gone, then further androgen receptor mediated gene expression is not going to occur. So by definition, a testosterone molecule or an androgen through the androgen receptor should be able to produce more androgen receptors, right? To, have further positive signaling. So that was shown with DHEA, pregnenolone, testosterone, and estrogen, I believe. I'm not sure if that happens with all of the other anabolic androgenic steroids, or maybe even with some of the glucocorticoid receptors regarding, or glucocorticoids regarding glucocorticoid receptors. right? Where they attach and then transcribe, and then more receptors get produced. So it's quite thin, but as long as you're on testosterone, you control your estrogen levels, favorably, and you're on DHA and pregnenolone supplementation, you should be able to produce more androgen receptors for the next influx of androgens or converted estrogens to have a increased positive effect. That's why you see with tapering the dosage upwards slowly, you usually see a better effect than slamming the doses in hard from the start. Okay, you hold it out of water, you gain a lot of size real quick, but that's not real muscle. This is muscle memory and a ton of bloat. So if you incrementally build up the dosages, technically, based on the limited research that's available, every time you increase the dosage, you get a positive feedback, producing more androgen receptors, more estrogen receptors. And now this higher dose can actually be utilized by the cell, because it's just a positive feedback, and the more you take, the more receptors that get produced. So again, the evidence is quite limited from the time that I was doing research, but they do upregulate. And then of course there's something, I think there was 1 or 2 studies that showed that carnitine upregulates androgen receptor density on the cell membrane, and then zinc and selenium play a heavy role in the androgen mediated gene expression and just gene transcription in general. So that's why I always advise people to stay on top of their zinc and their selenium intake. And even though it's selenium, you don't really have to pay so much attention to it. So maybe a supplemental 100 to 200 micrograms is more than enough, because you already get 3, 4, sometimes even 500 micrograms of selenium from your diet. Animal meat-based protein intake is very heavy with selenium. And zinc, okay, a beef liver is quite full with zinc and a couple nuts and seeds, but most people get maybe 15, 20 grams of zinc in, and I would prefer at least 50, right? So if you supplement with 30 milligrams zinc picolinate, or zinc, was another version that is highly absorbable. If you supplement with a little bit of zinc and a little bit of selenium, your overall androgen-mediated gene transcription and receptor production should be sufficient for you to actually utilize all the stuff that you're taking. And then all you need to do is just slowly build it up. All right. And now we're going to the SHBG. Again, I have videos on all of this, guys. All right. Darius, is the SHBG binding complex a key contributor to the increase of the immune system function seen with AAS use? That I'm not sure. I didn't research in that context. I do know that SHBG, the complex, it has a very funny timeline. So if you start researching the SHBG receptor complex, you go back in time, they say that SHBG binds up the hormone and it renders it inactive. And then they say, oh, we found this sex hormone binding receptor complex, but it doesn't activate anything when testosterone is bound to it. And then a little bit later, they say SHBG needs to bind to the receptor complex first, and then when testosterone enters the SHBG there, they can actually increase cyclic adenosine monophosphate concentrations within the cell. So the timeline is quite funky. The more research that they do, the more benefits they see of this receptor complex occurring. And again, you can see that with people that go back on, right, their SHBG level are quite high. Now, of course, their receptors are quote unquote fresh. They've cleaned out, their health is intact, but I think partially this is due to the SHBG concentrations. You see that growth and recovery is quite rapid, even on the first cycle. So there's no muscle memory involved. You go in your first cycle, SHBG levels on a natural are quite high, 50, 60, 70 nanomoles per liter. You go on a small cycle and you get all of this additional delivery through the sex hormone binding globulin receptor complex, right? Now, this cyclic adenosine monophosphate concentrations goes up in the cell, which is a cofactor, in a simple word to explain it, again, for gene transcription. So the more AMP, CAMP you have in the cell, the more electron donation and that kind of stuff you can have for gene transcription. So when you see SHBG levels decline and your cyclic adenosine monophosphate levels decline, now there's this cofactor that you need for gene transcription goes down as well. CAMP goes down. This is why I would love to run an experiment with injectable recombinant human SHBG, because I don't think it's the binding complex that's the issue, but it's the reduction of SHBG over time, because the more androgens you take, you see that your liver can only produce so much SHBG. levels start to decline. You get a lot more delivery, and the influx of new hormones just means that there's less total amount of SHBG available for you to have an effect through the SHBG receptor complex. So the more androgens you take, even though you might get androgen receptor upregulation, you get SHBG receptor complex downregulations because your SHBG levels actually go down. So this is something you have to keep in mind. That's why sometimes it might be better to do short cyclical diets where you build up your dosages, and as soon as you see your SHBG levels tank, you come off, you do a short cycle of HCG, perhaps progesterone, ecdysterone, or SERMs, which are all known to increase SHBG levels. Then you go back on cycle, and I can guarantee you that the same dose that you were using before, so let's say you end up at a gram, you go a month on ACG and Nolvadex and progesterone and ecdysterone, or you bring your SHBG from 4 to 30 or maybe even higher, I guarantee you will get better results going back on the exact same dose, because now this pathway has been restored, and the gene transcription has actually been improved because cAMPA levels are also increased within the cell themselves. All right, a couple thanks. Jason says, super helpful feedback. Thank you guys for joining, all three of you. And Darius also says thanks, so much appreciated. And then we'll go for the next question, 1201. Sorry for the repeat questions. You have videos on, have watched a ton of yours over the years, but it's hard to catch them all. Yeah, sometimes you forget. Dude, I'll tell you a funny story. So I don't even know what videos I made. So I've had it a couple of times where I had a great idea, and then I script it out, and I record it. And then my wife edits the video, and then I start watching it. I'm like, man, I've said this before. And then I have to go back. So did I say this on a podcast? Did I say this on a live Q&A? Or actually I made a video about it? And then I realized, like, I already made a video about it. So sometimes these questions just keep popping up, and people don't use the search function, so they don't go back. And of course, it's easier to ask me than actually using the search function. Yeah, story of my life. And then I completely forgot it because it's been 2 years. So I make a new video about it. So now there's like repeat videos on my channel because, well, it's already been recorded. It's already been pre-edited. So why not throw it up, right? So yeah, then the same question goes up twice, but I make sure that I spin it in a little bit different way with the thumbnail and the title. And then, yeah, I just get a ton more views. So sometimes it happens, man. Sometimes you make the same video twice, and sometimes people ask the same question twice. So there's no shame in that. You get busy, you forget, but it's always good to get a refresher. So that's why I'm here to doing the Vigorous Q&A. Hey guys, any more questions? I got a couple emails, so let me check the Patreon in the meantime. I got all these Patreon updates, so now I'm not sure if people are asking questions there. Oh, they're asking it there. Okay. Guys, you should be joining. Darkman 973. This is, what about lowering hematocrits? Okay, so lowering hematocrits, there's a couple different things you can do. You can do a therapeutic blood donation. You can limit your iron intake, right? You can take, what was that, the choline variant? I've been taking it recently, but I totally forgot the name. Actually, my serum iron levels came down from like over the reference range back down to normal levels with this choline variant. I'm sure you guys know it, and otherwise I'll post it in the question. So that was one of the ways you can bring your hematocrit down. You reduce the overall iron absorption that you get from your diet, because iron is one of the main ingredients, so to say, of your red blood cells, right? The hematocrit is very heavy with iron content. So that's another way. You can look into the elevation where you live. So if you live at high elevation, you might have to move down to low elevation, because oxygen in the atmosphere is going to be more at sea level. So that's an issue you might face. And then the steroids that you take. The more steroids you take, the higher your hematocrit is going to be. And then the worst offenders are like something like Primo, which is actually medically used against anemia, or Anadrol, also medically used against anemia. And boldenone is known to increase your hematocrit, and some individuals get the same from Trenbolone. Mastrone, you don't really see it. Nandrolone, some people. And then it's, orals perhaps here or there besides the Anadrol, which you already mentioned. So look into your drug intake to see what is the root cause. And then sleep apnea is also a horrible offender, So if you don't sleep well and you're snoring up a storm at night, maybe that's the root cause of your high hematocrit. So first step is diagnosis, right? I already made a video about sleep apnea, so please give that a watch. It's easy, quick search sleep apnea and you'll get it. Watch that video, diagnose if you have sleep apnea or not. Get that sorted by getting your body weight level down or removing some of the drugs which are causing a lot of systemic water retention. And then if you can't fix that, you need a CPAP machine. Okay, so you address the sleep apnea. And if your hematocrit is still high, right, you have to look into some of the other factors. So hematocrit being high, you can fix that real quick with a therapeutic blood donation, whether that's at the Red Cross or you do a therapeutic phlebotomy through the doctor. Red Cross doesn't want to accept your blood because you're a foreigner or because you're, I don't know, you have a disease or your hematocrit levels are too high, right? They check your or your hemoglobin right before you get your blood drawn. So because your blood is too thick in hemoglobin, they can't use it, so they'd rather leave it in you for you to get a stroke over it. Right? Very responsible. Then you might have to do a therapeutic blood donation, and if you can't do that, you can buy these IV blood donation kits online and through some of the Russian or Indian medical providers, and then you'll have to do it yourself. Fasting brings your hematocrit down. Inducing a blood, bleeding nose brings your hematocrit down, but it takes a while to lose 400 milliliters of blood through your nose. So lots of different ways for you to, get your hands dirty with. And the best prevention is, the best cure is, of course, prevention. All right, I got to tell these people not to post it here, but actually ask me in the live chat. Zach Stroud, does testosterone, Primo, and a low-dose Anavar sounds like a reasonable second cycle after doing a test-only cycle the first time? Or would just test and a DHT be more reasonable? No, man, it sounds totally reasonable to me. You do your first cycle as a testosterone replacement therapy dose, same dose. You add the same dose of Primo on top, and then maybe 4 weeks, 6 weeks later into it, you add in the Anavar, so you know exactly what the combination of test and Primo feels like. Hopefully, you do some blood work at the end of that. Let me write down the timestamp so I don't miss this one. Test and Primo. So you assess your estrogen levels on test and Primo and your cholesterol levels, right? Because those are going to be, skewed the most on this protocol. You see how much of an effect your Primo has on your estrogen levels because it does act as a reversely binding aromatase inhibitor. Let's say you're doing 200 tests, 200 Primo, your estrogen is too high. Okay, you bring your test down 150 tests and maybe 250 Primo because you're probably still getting good results on this 400 milligrams dose after 6 weeks. So you skew the ratio between test and Primo. Test down, Primo up, your estrogen should come down, and vice versa if your estrogen is too low. Now, you've assessed that with blood work. You've confirmed that you're on the right track. You add in the Anavar, which has minimal effect on estrogen levels. It drops SHBG levels quite a bit and skews your lipids. Okay, we know this, but estrogen levels, they don't really get changed from Anavar use. Probably because of the oxygen molecule, which is present in the structure, and that prevents it from, entering the aromatase enzyme and preventing the conversion of testosterone into estradiol. Right? Just speculating here, but every different chemical composition has a different binding affinity to a particular receptor or a particular binding protein or enzymatic protein that would otherwise convert it. So you do it step by step, right? You get your experience with tests. Now you get experience with test and Primo, confirmed it with blood work. Add the Anavar in after that, run that for a couple of weeks, do some more blood work, see where you're at, and then maybe start increasing the dosages. You go to 300 tests, 300 Primo, and instead of 5 milligrams Anavar per day, you go to 10 or 20, right? Depending on your results. So you just do it incrementally, and every time you want to make a change, blood work first, be responsible, confirm what's going on with blood work. And when you have the blood work, you can make some changes because now those changes are going to be informed, right? Okay, I see that Darius posted another question, so let me interject. It is 12:10. If estrogen promotes water retention and carbs intramuscular retention, cell swelling, etc., well, accompanying the receptors with a SERM, only still produce retention. So that's actually two methods you're inhibiting the fullness, because SERMs not only inhibit the estrogen receptor, they also reduce IGF-1 levels. So now you get less of a nutrient uptake effect by reducing IGF-1. This is why metformin makes you flat also. It reduces IGF-1. So I don't think that SERMs are a sustainable approach. I think you should only take them, if you have gyno symptoms, E2, carbs, and fullness. I think you only should take SERMs when you actually have an issue that warrants the use of SERMs. So PCT, you need to use SERMs, block your estrogen, increase your FSH and LH levels. Yes, go for it. 4 to 6 weeks, that's it. You got gyno, Nolvadex, couple weeks till you get your blood work and your estrogen levels under control, and then you take the Nolvadex out. And running a raloxifene at a very high dose to shrink your gyno 50%. Okay, I've tried it. Trust me, just came right back. So I did that for a couple months, right? And a very high dose of raloxifene, 120 milligrams per day, did shrink my gyno in half. Again, I was also dieting, so the fat mass around my chest went lower. Let me do have a physical check. Yeah, it did feel significantly lower than it is now, but that's over a year ago of stopping raloxifene use. And guess what? Whoop-de-fucking-do, those nipples came right back. And I've controlled my estrogen levels quite well up until now. Now that I'm off the Primo, my estrogen is going a little bit higher because I'm just running tests and ACG. So I will not be using SERMs, by the way. I'm not going to do a traditional PCT. I'll just take the test out and cruise along on HCG and HMG. And that should be enough to sustain my testosterone levels. And the negative feedback that I'll get from that is a non-issue, because I'll keep using HCG or HMG continuously, or maybe switch to recombinant LH or recombinant FSH if that doesn't work, which I think it will. So, that's in the pipeline. So, and right after that, after my wife gets pregnant, I'm going to go back on cycle. So why recover the HPTA when I can get to the last step of the process, the testicular function, with drugs, which are well documented in the fertility field, because HCG, HMG, LH, and FSH are the hormones used to improve your fertility. So that is my way going forward. So I wouldn't block the estrogen receptors with a SERM at all. I wouldn't do that. Only temporary if you need to. And if your estrogen is high, okay, you can prove it with blood work. Use an aromatase inhibitor, use a DHT derivative, use diindolylmethane for the balance of estrogen, lose body fat, right? So many ways you can mitigate estrogen surge. You use a SERM until the side effects are gone, if it's due to gyno. And then, you'll always retain a little bit of water, man. That's just part of the game. Unless you're super shredded and you're depleted, okay, then you won't hold water. You can take Anadrol and GH and 1 day per week high carbs. You won't hold any water. But if you're in the off season and your estrogen is moderately elevated and you're eating a ton of food and you're taking tests and GH and insulin, yeah, you're just going to hold water. You just deal with it. You can't be shredded year round, man, unfortunately. If that was the case, and the guys who are shredded year round, yeah, I can tell you firsthand that they're all miserable and all very, very hard to be around. Yeah, whatever act they do on social media, that's just an act. That's the 10 minutes of energy that they have to present a smile, and the rest of the day they're kind of super annoying to be around. So don't be that guy. Sohan Tana. It's a guy I actually met on a consultation, I think. Sohan, I hope you're doing well. Hope it's all well with you. And in Bangkok, Steve, I was talking to my friend and he said he heard semaglutide would shut something down internally from their friend's doctor. Is there any reality to this? What is the health life like in reality? I took 0.5 milligrams. It felt like it worked 1 day before and I had to take it again. Found liraglutide much better in this regard, but had to get it on a prescription now. My girlfriend took 0.5 milligrams semaglutide the last 2 days, but she partakes in a few legalized marijuana, which seems to bring her hunger back quite strongly. Yeah, so semaglutide, it really depends on the dose. And even though they recommend, 1 to 2 milligrams per week, for some people that's too much. And other people, that's not enough. So what you can do is with semaglutide, instead of once a week injections, just like what they would otherwise do with a testosterone injection once a week, you do it every day. just a low dose, just like liraglutide. And then you see that semaglutide actually works quite well. So you do a 1/4 milligram every day, and you get very nice and steady appetite suppression. Or you do 0.5 milligram every day. Don't do 2 milligrams every day, then you're wrecked. What you notice with liraglutide, or you do 0.6, 1.2, 1.8 milligrams towards the end or stages of being super hungry, you build up a tolerance. And it's the same with semaglutide or liraglutide or dulaglutide. Over time, you just build up a tolerance and you get hungry. So that's a bit of a pain in the ass. So ideally, you start low. Regardless of the GLP-1 receptor agonist, I would just do daily injections, micro, with the lowest effective dose you can get away with. Because at one point, you'll need to increase it the longer you diet. You get more hungry, whether your receptors downregulate or feedback, or your stomach is just growling a little bit more than usual because you're actually so depleted. You're going to have to increase the dose. So start low, and don't use appetite increasing drugs at the same time. So it's like negative signals, right? You have your appetite suppressant and your appetite boosting, and now you either balance out, or you're like appetite suppressed most of the day, and then appetite boost at the end of the day, and now you get the munchies and you eat a ton of food before bed, and now you're still ending up fatter, right? So this is something you have to keep in mind. Like if she wants to do a little bit of marijuana here and there, by all means, but limit the exposure, right? You get a solid week of dieting in, and then maybe on your Sunday or Saturday refeed cheat meal, okay, you toke a little bit, or you have a magic brownie or whatever, and then you get high, you enjoy yourself, and you add eat a little bit more food than usual. But then the net result over the week, you had 6 solid days on semaglutide following your diet, and 1 day on wheat or another appetite increasing drug. And you had a wonderful night because you were super chill and you ate whatever you wanted, right? A mental reset. So you got to find that balance. All right, next question. Paul Shortall. Any benefits from 1, splitting GH AM PM 1.5 IUs each time, and mini breaks from Lantus for non-lifting days, let's say Thursday or Sunday? 12/17 HGH. Okay, and I will do the timestamps probably tomorrow because it is getting late. Benefits of splitting up GH at 1.5 IUs each. Yeah, you can do that. So, I've tried so many different things over the years, microdosing GH 1 IU like 6 times a day, right? 6 times in one go. Insulin, 3 days on, 1 day off. Insulin, 6 days on, 1 day off. Megadosing insulin, quite high, like 50 IUs, long-acting insulin, and then 10 IUs pre-workout. For like 8 months in duration, no issues. So, because when I was like hardcore bodybuilding, my life was like, robot. It was like a full-time job. So you check your blood glucose levels all the time. You don't miss meals. You eat on time. They're all perfectly cooked. You basically have time for nothing else because bodybuilding just consumes you. Then you can actually get away with a lot, man. Because you're controlling all the variables. And you see like one day your blood glucose levels are a little bit higher. Okay, you reduce the insulin dose that day. You make that little quick adjustment for that day. Maybe take a little bit of berberine in that morning to improve your insulin sensitivity. And then the next day it's right back. So if you micromanage all these little variables, you can actually get just results on the fly because your protocol is changing a little bit all the time. And then maybe one day you notice you have not so much water retention, and you're like, you know what, I need to restore a little bit fullness. So I'm going to do a mega dose of growth hormone post-workout, because from my personal experience, a higher dose of growth hormone results in more fullness for the next couple of hours afterwards. All right, so regarding the overall effects, besides the cosmetic effects, it has no additional effects compared to splitting up the dose. If anything, splitting up the dose might be better for fat loss, or might be better for increasing IGF-1 levels, which, the scientific evidence is very conflicting in that sense, because the scientific evidence says that multiple doses of growth hormone, or MK677 or something like that, with sustained growth hormone levels are the best for IGF-1 levels. And then when I see on blood work results is when guys switch over to mega dosing growth hormone once per day, or twice per day, like 4 IUs at a time. their IGF-1 levels are way higher than splitting up the dose. So scientific evidence is one thing, and the blood work of my clients is another thing. And it's the only variable that changed, right? Because I have plenty of clients that do blood work every month, or they make a change, they do blood work every 2 weeks. They're OCD just like I am. And they just want to get the data as soon as possible and not shoot in the dark or worry or think about, if it's even effective or not. No, they make a small change, goes up. You're like, but the scientific evidence says this, but the practical applications in the real world says that. What are we going to go with? We're going to go with the real world blood work results. So this is something you have to keep in mind. In the end, you're going to have to experiment. I think that 1.5 IUs is twice per day is great for fat loss purposes. You should get minimal effect regarding insulin resistance. And if you feel that you're losing out on fullness during the workout or in the day in general, maybe switch that from 1.5 IUs twice per day before activities to 3 IUs post-workout. If you have a crazy workout, then by all means, take it post-workout, take that for 2 or 3 weeks and see if your fullness and IGF-1 levels go up. So you have to personalize it and then keep logs and track all of that before you really figure out what really works for you. And mini breaks from Lantus, if you don't, one second, babe. Can you? My cat is being very loud, so it makes it hard to focus. So if you notice that your insulin sensitivity at certain points during the week goes down, maybe the intensity of your workout isn't high enough. So let's say you have your cheat meal on Saturday, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, your fasting blood glucose levels are maybe 100, and then later in the week it starts to come down. Okay, maybe you're not training hard enough Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday on the first couple of days of the week to really improve your insulin sensitivity and bring your fasting glucose levels back down. Or maybe you just eat a little bit too much like an asshole over the weekend. Maybe you lost insulin sensitivity because you're eating a ton of saturated fats or a ton of simple sugars over the weekend, and now your body's like, my skeletal muscle is full. Just take it, shuttle it over to adipose tissue, and then you take insulin to force it into skeletal muscle, but it's full, right? So it's not going to accept it anyway. So these are all things you have to look into. I just had a client said he gained like 11 kilos in a week. He started on a new protocol that I designed with him, which involved long-acting insulin and pre-workout insulin, short-acting. And he gained a lot of size. He was off for a long time. He dieted. So he went from TRT dose, 250 test, and bodybuilder TRT, dieting his ass off, shredded, veins everywhere. Super nice place to start the off season. I write him a protocol. We increase the calories, increase the drugs, right? From 250 test to 250 test plus Primo plus Anavar, the cookie cutter protocol that I recommend to everybody, but it worked for everybody, so to say. So it's a great starting point. And then also 10 units of Lantus and 5 units Humalog post-workout. 11 kilos in a week because he comes from the dieting phase on a low dose of steroids to a higher dose of steroids and insulin in the picture and increasing his food intake. His insulin sensitivity is better than it was on diet, funnily enough, because now he's more relaxed, right? His fasting cortisol levels are lower, so his serum glucose levels are actually going down. It could also partially be to the insulin, which works for longer than 24 hours. So you get a little bit of a, storing effect in the morning when this guy wakes up. And he's still doing fasted cardio. So his blood glucose levels went down, but he gained so much size that I told him, listen, dude, this is too much size in a week. Right? It's going to put pressure on your heart. So let's take the long-acting insulin out for now. Give yourself a couple of days to drop the water weight, skip that cheat meal over the weekend, and then bring you back down with 4 kilos to, make it a little bit more sustainable. So all these little variables you have to keep in mind. And I know it's very hard to do, but that's why you have experienced coaches out there, So if you're kind of not really sure what to do, what direction to go, should you do this insulin protocol or that growth hormone protocol, just hire somebody. It will pay back with dividends. And most good coaches, they go from $250 a month, So by all means, man, just invest a little bit. It will be like the best investment you can get into like a crash course into your own health. Unfortunately, I don't take clients anymore. I do consultations, but there's so many good clients or so many good coaches out there that learned either from me or have similar practices that, yeah, by all means, man, just get a coach that will educate it, and then you'll get the results better and you'll mitigate all of the side effects, because these coaches will be able to pick up on where it's going wrong, often way before it really starts to go wrong. That's why I took my guy off insulin right away, because he 11 kilos in a week. That's a bit too much. Hey guys, you have any more questions? Hit them over. And otherwise, we're gonna call it quits for today, because I think the 3 guys that are in the chat right now already asked all of their questions. Darius, Jason, and the guy that left, Slowodan. So let me know if you guys have one more question, and otherwise I'm going to close it off and start doing the timestamps. And then that's it for this week's Q&A. Can you guys write me a little review on Patreon? Not like it was the best shit ever, but just let me know about the internet quality and how the setup is. Because like if this Patreon doesn't really take off, because it's coming from YouTube to Patreon, right? So you have to go cross-platform. If I notice that it's difficult for people to convert from YouTube to Patreon, then I might just move the membership site over to YouTube, and then people can sign up through there, and then I'll just do the Vigorous Q&A live there. Maybe that's an easier opportunity. But let's give this a couple months to really sort out the kinks, and then see what the best approach is going forward. And otherwise, I'll talk with Chase Irons one of these days and see how he did it, because he's got that, YouTube Live and membership section going quite well to manage the questions coming in. So maybe he's got a better idea. All right, so I think that the questions are pretty much done. We're just going to leave it here. Thank you guys so much. You 3 have been awesome. Hopefully next time we'll get a lot more people in the chat, and I'll be back next week. So again, I'll put up another vote for what the best time zone is. Hope if it's 11 o'clock my time, and it's early in the morning in the United States or later in the evening in Europe, then we'll just go by that. And but we might have to switch it around a little bit. But I'll try to announce the ideal time zone a couple days in advance. Thank you guys so much. Oh, Darius said one more thing. It was a great session. Connection was 90% stable. All right, Darius, that's awesome. That's good to hear. Again, I'm living in Thailand, so it's a developing country, but the internet is not 100% reliable. Okay, guys, thanks so much. We'll see you next week. And as always, thank you guys so much for your support. The Patreon is growing really well. Hiring an editor is going to cost about $5,000. I'm just currently in the last process of hiring one. So I think within 1 or 2 weeks, we'll have a full-time editor on board. So I hope I can get the Patreon up to about $5,000 to cover for the editor. But otherwise, I'll just pay it out of pocket, because, editing this much out of my day is just becoming a burden. So any contribution that you guys make is highly, highly helpful. Until next time, Steve signing out, and bring on those questions. We'll see you next week.